High in the Himalayan mountains, one of Asia's most mysterious venomous snakes has been slithering around for over a century and a half, quietly keeping a secret that scientists are only now uncovering. What they found rewrites part of what we thought we knew about this species entirely. Scientists discovered that a mysterious venomous snake living in the Himalayas has been keeping a major secret for over 160 years. So what exactly has stayed hidden for this long? And how does something living in plain sight manage to fool researchers for a century and a half? The Himalayas represent one of the most extreme, most difficult to access environments on the planet, home to some of the highest mountains in the world alongside deep valleys and remote regions that remain genuinely difficult to reach even with modern equipment. That extreme terrain has historically made comprehensive wildlife study in the region enormously challenging, leaving significant gaps in scientific understanding even for species that have technically been documented for well over a century. Here's where the mystery actually gets interesting. How does a snake first documented over 160 years ago still have secrets left to reveal today? Species first identified in the 1800s were often described based on limited specimens, sometimes a single individual collected during an expedition with far less detailed study than modern taxonomy demands. Early naturalists working in remote, difficult terrain frequently had to work with whatever specimens they could obtain, sometimes just one or two individuals, leaving enormous gaps in understanding about variation within a species, its full range, its behavior, and details that would only become clear through decades of additional research. Nobody had the resources or access to conduct at the time. Modern research techniques have transformed what is actually possible when revisiting a species like this one. Genetic sequencing technology, unavailable to naturalists working a century and a half ago, allows contemporary researchers to examine relationships between specimens with a level of precision simply impossible using physical measurement and visual observation alone. Applying these modern tools to a species first documented so long ago frequently reveals surprises, hidden genetic diversity, previously unrecognized distinct populations, or traits that went completely unnoticed by researchers working with far more limited technology and access. So what does this specific discovery actually change about how we understand this snake? While the full scientific details continue circulating through research publications, discoveries like this one typically fall into one of a few categories. Sometimes what was assumed to be a single species turns out to actually represent multiple distinct species that simply look similar enough to have been grouped together for over a century. Other times, researchers uncover a previously unknown behavioral trait, feeding habits, reproductive patterns, or venom characteristics that had simply never been documented despite the species itself being known and named for generations. Venomous snake research specifically carries real practical stakes beyond pure scientific curiosity. Understanding a species' venom composition matters enormously for medical treatment, since antivenoms are developed based on the specific toxins a given species produces. A previously unrecognized trait, whether behavioral or biological, could have genuine implications for how medical professionals in the region approach treatment for anyone unfortunate enough to be bitten, making this kind of research valuable well beyond academic interest alone. That practical dimension is part of why funding for this kind of taxonomic revisiting research exists at all, even when a species already has a name and a formal scientific description on record. Medical institutions and conservation organizations increasingly recognize that a species being named is only the first step, not the finish line, and that ongoing research into already documented species can carry real, immediate value for public health in the regions where that species actually lives alongside human populations. The Himalayan region more broadly continues producing genuinely significant wildlife discoveries, specifically because so much of its terrain remains difficult to access and thoroughly study. Remote mountain valleys, extreme elevation changes, and challenging, weather conditions have historically limited how comprehensively researchers could survey the region's biodiversity, meaning species long assumed to be well understood frequently turn out to hold surprises once modern research tools and renewed expeditions finally reach areas that have gone relatively unexamined for generations. This kind of discovery also highlights something worth remembering about scientific knowledge more broadly. Being formally documented and named does not automatically mean a species has been fully understood. A snake identified over a century and a half ago carries the same official recognition as one described last year, but that recognition says nothing about how thoroughly it has actually been studied since that initial naming, leaving room for genuinely significant discoveries even about species that have technically been known to science for generations. For researchers working in herpetology and conservation biology, discoveries like this one reinforce the value of revisiting historically documented species with modern tools, rather than assuming older, well-established classifications have nothing left to reveal. Sometimes the most surprising discoveries do not come from finding something brand new. They come from finally understanding, in full, something that has been hiding in plain sight the entire time. Drop a comment on what you think was hiding in this snake's secret for so long. Subscribe for more wild animal mysteries like this one, and share this with anyone who thinks we already know everything about the creatures living on this planet.